You're listening to the Lovish Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Sita Hood, vision architect and licensed therapist. Each week, I'm going to help you to develop the belief and strategy necessary to make an immediate impact on the world by deep diving into topics like mental wellness, faith, relationships, and you guessed it, love. I should mention before we hop into the show, this is not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed therapist. Welcome to the special series, The Holiday Hype. In this series, we're focused on releasing old narratives that make us dread the holidays, embracing new perspectives and traditions, and getting hype for our newfound freedom. Grab your mug, your notebook and pen, and let's get hype! Have the holidays historically been stressful for you? Do you find yourself avoiding family gatherings at all costs? Do you need to reassess your boundaries before you go over Auntie Pookie's house? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then today's episode is going to be for you. Specifically for you. Now, if you're listening to this episode on your favorite listening platform, just like last week's episode, this episode is available as a video podcast over on my YouTube channel. Welcome back to the Holiday Hype series. This is episode 2 out of 5. So if you missed the episode, I will link it down below for you to check out. Today, we're talking about boundaries. That was like the weakest drum intro ever. I did not play the drums in high school. That would have been my sister, but we just gonna roll with it. Now, if you ask the average person, they will likely say, yes, Sita, I know where my boundaries are, and they definitely have them. I would not disagree right there. However, where I will disagree is that people fail to understand how to enforce their boundaries. Most people have boundaries, but they fail to enforce them. So if you've been rocking with me for any period of time, attending workshops, listening to the podcast, watching YouTube videos, I'm going to assume that you have some level of boundaries in place, but maybe you haven't been enforcing them. Whew, that's you, girl? We got to talk, okay? We got to talk. But this is a judgment-free zone, so no judgment here. How do you know if you fit in this category? Well, let me just paint a picture for you, okay? So you said that you were not going to have people spending the night at your house without planning in advance, because usually when you invite your cousin, then she invite her sister and her sister's best friend, and then you just end up with a house full of people. And it doesn't matter how many times you told them you don't want this, it happens. So that same cousin, how she ended up getting over to your house is because she was like, yo, hey girl, how you doing? I miss you so much. You like, yes, boo, I miss you too. It's been so long. She don't live here no more. So check it out. She just had a baby, right? So she's like, don't you want to see little poo-poo? Yeah, I want to see little poo-poo. That's what you say, because, you all about the kids. And so she says, okay, I got a quick favor to ask you, though. Could I stay with you? Because I was supposed to be staying at cousin such and such house, right? But I found out that this other relative finna be over there. They smoke, right? And my baby brand new, and it's COVID and monkeypox. And I'm not really feeling like having my baby around all of that. So you know what? You say, all right, girl, you my girl. I'll let you come through. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And so she's like, oh my God, for real? Thank you so much. I would not ask you if I really did not need it. And I really did not feel comfortable asking nobody else. You're like, you my girl. I got you. Okay. Good Samaritan act done for the day. Okay. So 2 days later, she pulled up to your house, right? You run out to the grocery store, right? And while you out at the grocery store, you pull back around to your house. Why so many cars in your driveway? She invited people over to come see the baby. So it's about 50, 11 of them up in your house. They come and see the baby, and the coffee table ended up broke when they left, and the couch got peed on, but don't nobody know who did it. Nobody know who did it. So that's what usually happens when we fail to enforce our boundaries. Now, I am not saying that you can't let little poo poo spend a night and you don't want to meet the baby and all of that. But you need to have some ground rules and you need to have some boundaries in place for how you will go about doing that. Let's be real here. Some of these situations, can they catch us by surprise? Yes, absolutely they can. But in reality, you've been in your family for 45 years. You know what's coming up. You know how your family members behave. You know what they typically want to do. So you need to make a plan for that, a contingency plan in case you decide to bend a little bit on your boundaries. Again, I'm going to assume if you are a listener of this podcast, you have some sort of boundaries in place, but you haven't been enforcing them. Or maybe you start off enforcing them, but somewhere along the lines, you made all these little micro compromises because you was like, well, it can't be that bad. And I don't smoke over here, so I don't want the baby to get sick. And now you're back to the point where you are frustrated with everybody asking you repeatedly to do things. And it seems like everybody in your life has a demand for you and you don't want to be mean. So regardless of how tired you are, how overworked you are, you say yes. Yes, I'll go pick you up from the airport. You let them manipulate you into going to the event you know you ain't want to go to and ain't got no business going to because you can't control your tongue when you get there and people get to acting a fool. You don't stand up for yourself when Auntie Pookie start asking you about not having kids or being married. And the list of broken boundaries goes on and on and on and on and on until you are just completely exhausted. That's going to end today. Today, we're going to take a minute to reevaluate intentionally our boundaries and where we might have engaged in micro compromises. So I want you to grab your notebook and pen. If you are like me, you can grab your digital notebook and your digital pen, or because we don't discriminate, we still do use real pens. And I got a real notebook back there, but I'm not going to grab it. I have already worked through this. So are you ready for this? Are you ready? Are you ready? If you're not ready, pause the episode, go get your notebook and pen, because I'm going to give you a 4-part formula for refreshing your boundaries. Okay? I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to take me a little sip. Ooh, did y'all go and get y'all Starbucks drink? They just released today for me, but it'll be last week by the time y'all hear this episode. I love caramel brulee. That's me. I'm a caramel brulee head, okay? What do you drink? If you are a fan of the Starbucks seasonal drinks, what do you drink? Okay, ready? This is the Boundary Refresh formula. All right, we have got our notebook, we have got our pen, we are ready. Ready. All right, so the first step of this formula is the OG. What are the old boundaries that you had in place? And I want you to think about why those boundaries were really important to you. Because if you put those boundaries in place, chances are you weren't doing it to be mean. You actually had intent. There was a reason why you set that up. So in the example that I gave at the start of the episode, the old boundary was no family spending the night without planning it in advance, because usually they invite more people over without asking me, or maybe some stuff ends up broken. So you're going to take a minute to evaluate what the OG boundaries were. Original gangsta boundaries. Okay. All right. And once you have that, again, I'm just giving you these to write down as you go along. You can pause the episode and fill this in so that we are doing it together and working through it together. That's what I think is the best method, because then you're ready for the next step. Or you can just write down all the questions and circle back around to it. But if you circle back around to it, or you say you're going to circle back around to it, can you actually circle back around to it? Because a bunch of people be like, yeah, I'm going to come back and do that later. And then we don't do it. And then we be mad. And then we'd be like, what happened to my boundaries? Oh, I didn't really actually do the homework. Okay. I'm going to get up out your business. I'm going to get out your business. Okay. I'm out. All right. So the next step is loops and traps. Loopholes and areas that you got trapped in compromise. So again, going back to this original example, your cousin just had a baby. She just had a little pookie poo poo. And you don't want the baby to be exposed to no smoke, right? So where are the loopholes in your boundaries? Where did you get trapped into falling in your old behavior? So I want you to think about your current frustrations. Think about the boundaries that you chose to set up. That's the first one, the OGs. And then where are the loopholes in the OGs? So maybe you set that up, you tried to enforce those boundaries, it just didn't go according to plan. Why is that? Where are the loopholes? What is actually happening here? Not what you wanted to happen, what is actually happening? Or why are you struggling to reinforce them? Is it because you don't want to turn little poo-poo away? Little poo-poo and her baby, or the baby, and at this point I've forgotten who's poo-poo, the cousin, the baby, I don't know. We just gonna roll with the example. Point being, why are you struggling to reinforce your boundaries? This is also a good time to do an evaluation on all the relationships in your life. There is an episode, I think it's episode like 25 or something. There's an episode that tells you how to evaluate your relationships, and I will actually link that for you down below in the description box or the show notes so that you can check that out, because figuring out the loopholes and the micro compromises that you made right here would also be like, is there a particular person that you always tend to compromise with? And if that's the case, why is that compromise coming up? Is that okay? It's okay to not really, like, if you choose to say, well, this person is an exception, that's totally fine. This is not to create rigid rules that you can't function in. It's to keep you from having a meltdown and to help you to be able to use your voice, right? So we got the OG, we got loops and traps, and then we have new kids on the block, got a bunch of hits. Chinese food makes me sick. I think it's flat. Oh, okay. New kids on the block, part 1. What has changed in your life? What new boundaries need to be implemented or updated? So when we are thinking about the new kids on the block, we want to think about my new considerations. I'm now married. So my husband was extremely pissed off that all of this happened, and especially while I was at the grocery store. And he reminded me that I said nobody could spend the night, but I compromised due to this situation. So you want to ask yourself, has anything changed in my life? Are there any life transitions that are making it hard and making me fall into these micro compromises or these loopholes? What is that? What does it look like? Where can we plug up the holes? That's what you want to think about. And by the way, in case y'all are wondering, no, this is not a real life example, honey. I just be picking them, I be picking them out from anywhere. The Lord just drop it right on in there and I just roll with the example. But no, this is not a real example. But I know that it happens more often than not. So we're rolling with it. Whether it be little Pookie got a new baby, or it be, somebody and their kids need a place to stay, there's always going to be something. And so if you decide to compromise, you just have to make a plan for what that compromise looks like so that your boundaries are still being respected, but you still get to see your family and have a good time, and your husband not frustrated with you, and all of those different things. So I want you to think about the new kids part one. Are there any life transitions? Anything that you need to now add in where your boundaries need to be updated? And the final step of this, well, the final introduction of it is new kids part two. Do you have any new needs? What are your needs for this season? Not a year down the line, not 6 months down the line. What do you need right now that needs to be considered in your boundaries? Maybe you planned Christmas to go a different way, or Thanksgiving to go a different way, but now y'all moved into a new house, or now your husband is out of town for work during the holiday. Like, what are the new considerations that need to be considered, taken into account, thought about, planned for, etc.? What are those things? How do we manage them? I'm going to take a sip of my caramel brulee and put a little bit of chapstick on while y'all answer that question, okay? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got on a new lippy today, but I feel like this caramel brulee is jacking it up. But that's okay, because, we're just going to roll with it. Okay, you got that answered? So in the example that I gave with the cousin, the new need would be that you now have to consider your husband's feelings along with your own, because this is not just your house. You did want to see the baby too, but you should have a different set of previously discussed expectations with your husband if you decide to relax your boundaries for somebody. So, for example, if we previously discussed that our backup, in case we're feeling generous, might be, preparing to let her stay, but maybe we'll have to make other arrangements with having people to see the baby, or even set up ground rules around where people see the baby. So maybe they can only visit in a family room instead of in the dining room with my expensive china cabinet, or in the living room with my glass coffee table. Like, you really want to consider what new boundaries need to be implemented and what do you want and need in this season. So now the final step of the boundary refresh formula is mesh it all together. So you got the OG, you got loops and traps, you got new kids 1 and new kids 2. That is going to give you your refreshed boundaries for this season. Did that seem complex? Or does the formula make sense? Hopefully it's simple. I want to know what you think. Comment down below, or if you are listening, tag me on Insta and let me know. Here's the most important thing that I want you to know. You can do this. In fact, you need to do this. Your boundaries should be honored and respected just like everybody else's boundaries. And respecting boundaries does not have to equal being mean. It just means in terms of the relationship, your boundaries are clearly defined. The terms of the relationship are clearly defined. So I really want you, again, to get hyped for the holidays, but that means that you got to do the work so that you can enjoy this holiday season. We are determined to make it your best year yet. Do your homework, okay? Do your homework, please.
Girl, what you been listening to? What you been watching? What you been reading? Media Queens, what's up?
What's up, Media Queens? Part of my boundary refresh in the middle of last year was realizing that I had lost the time that I used to set aside for my reading, and how much that really, really relaxed me. So I got back to it. I have been going through a lot of books lately. I love reading, and it's one of those things that is like, once you're back in the swing of it, it is really hard to stop, right? I just literally want to lay around and read all day. And if you are wondering, you can find me somewhere in between Christina C. Jones, Alice Feeney, and Frida McFadden. I know. I know. For my book readers out there, y'all are probably like, oh, that's an eclectic mix. I get it. But Black romance novels or love stories and psycho thrillers or thrillers are my top two favorite genres. Okay. Now, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, like Alice be going dark sometimes, okay? And that can be a little bit challenging when Alice take her books dark. Like I was this close to calling her one of my favorite authors, and then I read I Know Who You Are. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, honey, don't read that book. Don't read the book. Do not read that book. You're going to want to read it after I say this, but trust me, if you get to the end of that book, you are likely going to be mad that you read it. So if you choose to be disobedient and you read that book, don't say I did not warn you. Anyway, lately I've been caught up in CCJ's Serendipitous series and loving it. I love how she creates her own little worlds with her books. So exciting. And it's like I feel like I'm a part of the town because I already know all the shops and everything. Like Urban Grind Coffee Shop. I really want to go there, right? Like I love the vibe that she set up in the book. I'm trying to go to Urban Grind. Like if that exists or we can erect that somewhere on a CCJ book tour, like I am totally in. Run me the tickets, honey. Okay. So that is what is on my bookshelf. Media Queens. So just as a quick recap for this episode, we talked about the boundary refresh formula. I gave you a 4-step process for refreshing your boundaries, the OGs. What are the old boundaries you have in place? Loops and traps. What are the loopholes and traps that you tend to get caught up on? New kids on the block. What has changed in your life? What transitions have you had? New Kids on the Block Part 2. What do you need in this season? If you enjoyed this episode, share the love. Share it with your mama, share it with your auntie, share it with your best friend. Then head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. 5 stars, 5, okay? 5-star review, because reviews help the podcast to grow and they help encourage me to keep doing this and giving you guys great content to know that you love it. All right, that's all I have for you this week. I'll see you out in these social media streets. Bye. Let's get hyped for the holidays. Cheers.